Hey guys, today I want to talk about how to do damage using Arc and Stasis weapons so that you're more prepared for the weekly surge when it's not favorable. The current meta mostly has Void and Solar weapons in it, and it doesn't really have much in the way of Arc or Stasis weapons. That being said, there are still some decent Arc weapons out there, and whenever it is Arc Surge week, they do end up being better than the normal meta just because of the unfair damage buff that they get for that week. So we're going to go ahead and look into those weapons, find out what they are, what the best roles are for them, and how to use them. So to start things off, this is going to be my favorite combination, and what I also believe is the most powerful everywhere that it is applicable, and that's going to be combining two weapons in the form of Cloud Strike and Wendigo. If you guys didn't know, Cloud Strike is an alright weapon DPS wise. It's definitely not amazing, however it does put up some okay numbers, and when it does come to Arc Week, it ends up being one of the best snipers in the game. As for Wendigo, it's pretty much the best arc grenade launcher in the game right now in the heavy slot, and it has access to auto-loading holster mixed with Cascade, which makes it very quick at dealing its DPS. And now that we've got the buffed up reserves from grenade launchers, which we got back into the light, we're able to have a good enough total damage to not need something that increases our total damage like bait and switch. Pretty much Cascade Point is a great damage perk now on heavy grenade launchers because they have such a ridiculous amount of ammo. The reason I'm presenting these together is because they kind of just go together. The Cascade Point on Wendigo makes it run out of ammo pretty quickly, and you need a good weapon to proc Cascade Point anyway, which is what Cloud Strike can do. There's not really any good Arc legendary rapid fire frame snipers out there, which is what you want for Cascade Point, and this gun does have triple tap, and it has its own unique exotic damage perk in the form of the Thunderstorms, which lends itself to rotations because the Thunderstorms do have a slight cooldown. So the idea behind this mini rotation is basically just to shoot 3 shots of Cloud Strike, and then switch to the Wendigo, dump out its mag, go back to the Cloud Strike, and repeat. Remember, the Wendigo is going to have auto-loading holster, however the Cloud Strike will not have any form of auto-loading, so you'll be able to do this rotation twice before you need to reload the Cloud Strike. However, you could do the Izanagi swap trick, and basically start reloading the Cloud Strike, and then animation cancel by switching back to the Wendigo, so you can really reduce the amount of time spent manually reloading. This is by far the most frequent loadout you're going to be able to use across all of the raids. It's great for stuff like the Witness fight, the War Priest, pretty much any of the bosses in King's Fall. It's good against something like Ear Ute as well in Crota's End. Pretty much all of our regular damage phase, 30-second damage phase stuff. Cloud Strike and Wendigo is a great combination, and it's actually what I used during Pantheon whenever we were doing that on Arc and Stasis week. So next up, we're going to be looking at a lazy Arc Surge week damage option. Basically, it's a weapon that has not the best damage out there, but it still has pretty good damage, especially on Arc Surge week helping it out, and it's just very easy to use overall. It has very good rate of fire, it has good ammo reserves, and that is of course the Prospector. And I know this one's probably a little bit unexpected for everybody, but at least before Final Shape, and to my knowledge there's been no change to grenade launchers with the Final Shape, however the damage scaling is different, so pretty much everything has to be retested. But at least before Final Shape, the Prospector was putting up a very respectable amount of DPS, and with the increased ammo, you got really good grenade reserves as well, so it became a pretty effective, just lazy damage option. It actually does more DPS than a lot of other lazy single exotic weapon damage stuff like Leviathans or Whisper. So I would genuinely and unironically recommend using Prospector to people who are looking for something simple. Pretty much anybody who would be using Thunderlord, just use Prospector instead for 50% more damage. So that's what I'd do. Don't use Thunderlord. Next up, we're going to talk about some of our up-close options. Mostly this is going to be for stuff like Crota, or obviously Herald in the Salvation's Edge, or even some dungeon bosses like Ekthar or Rathil, just any of the close-range encounters where you typically use something like swords. And there are 2 main options I would recommend for this. Basically, if you are able to get surrounded, I would recommend using Bequest and using the Galley Sword with it, especially on Crota, because remember, Crota does take increased damage from swords. And on Crota, if your team is not able to proc surrounded, if you're on an LFG and they just have no idea what they're doing or whatever, there is a world drop sword called Naz Redden, which has Whirlwind and Relentless, which you can use, which is a bit of a ridiculous pick, but it is arc burn. I also want to say that the Zephyr Christmas Sword is Stasis and is able to roll with Relentless Whirlwind as well, and I know for a fact it has Relentless and Surrounded, however Bequest would still be better because of its impact stat. So that's sort of the Crota meta for you, but I think what more people are looking at is the Herald of Finality, just because, you know, the newest raid is a little more relevant. And for Herald, I would actually recommend not using swords at all, and just going with Legend of Acreus. If you guys didn't know, Acreus kind of cooks. It has very good DPS when you're making use of Trench Barrel, and remember that because the fire rate is so slow on aggressive frame shotguns, you can fire the shot and reload a shell before the fire rate cooldown is over, which means that you don't have to ever manually reload the gun at all. You don't have to have any sort of special tech. All you need is an arc reloader mod on your gloves. Swords are definitely decent against the Herald as well, however, they are not necessary like they are on Crota because he does not have the special sword scaler that Crota has. And if any team member on your team doesn't have access to Acreus or the Catalyst, which is extremely important for it, then you could have them run Tractor or just throw them on a sword or something. And for the last part of the video, we're going to be talking about some rocket launcher options because I know a lot of teams still like to use rockets and they're still pretty powerful on most of the bosses in the game. And we have two main rocket launchers on the plate today. The first one being the Cold Comfort, which I think is probably the better of the two, however the other one also being the Crux Termination, and we're going to get into the best perks on both of those, so let's get started and we'll look at Cold Comfort first. This one definitely has a little bit less variety, however the perks are overall stronger. Basically for Cold Comfort, you're looking at Envious Assassin plus Bait and Switch, and ideally Impact Casing for the extra 2% damage. If you've never used this gun before, it's actually easier than it's ever been. Basically, all you have to do is kill one enemy with one of your regular weapons, your specials or your primaries. You switch to the rocket and you put it away and you get another kill, and you now have 3 in the mag when you pull it out next. Then you need to get a finisher or revive a teammate and you will get the Origin effect, which gives you an extra 4th rocket automatically once you run out. From here, you're going to want to have anything you can for instant reloads and reload speed increases, but basically this is just going to be a dump rocket where you proc bait and switch with your other 2 weapons and then fire off your rocket. You could use stuff like grapple reloads or rain of fire on Warlock. You could use hunter dodge with the Radiant Dance machines, or just using regular hunter dodge with something like 6 Coyote, or just a regen increaser like there is on Prismatic. Unfortunately, the Facet of Command was just completely nerfed into the ground, just absolutely obliterated. Basically, Bungie just optimally DPS'd it using freaking Void weapons on Void Surge weak against it. It's absolutely ridiculous what they did to it. They added an 11-second cooldown from a 0-second cooldown that it had before. So I wouldn't use Facet of Command on Prismatic. Unfortunately, it seems like if you want to do DPS on Warlock, you are going to have to go back to the older subclasses now. But that's probably a topic for its own video in the future. But that is how you run Cold Comfort. It's very simple and it is pretty good. However, it does require you to build into it a little bit to really get an effective dump. The other option is the Crux Termination, which has slightly worse damage perks. Basically, you can have either Surrounded or Explosive Light. Surrounded is significantly more damage, however, it's obviously a lot harder to proc. However, if you do end up in a situation where you can proc it, you're going to be top damage. As for the third column, the only thing that this gun really brings to the table is Slide Shot. It does have access to Reconstruction as well as Envious Assassin, however this is completely replicable on other rockets, but if you do want to use those perks, you absolutely can if you just need it for Arc Week. If you do have Slide Shot, it is pretty much the best dumping reload perk in the entire game though. It is actually the fastest way to unload 10 rockets in the entire game. And remember, as long as you have something that you can slide into, you're not even going to be actually moving. Or if you don't have anything, remember to slide forward and backwards and not side to side so that you're not trolling your teammates. That's pretty much going to do it for the video. I hope you guys learned something new, and comment below if there are any weapons you think I might have missed or anything that you think that I overrated. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye!